won't even get to cannabis for about 10 minutes, There's so much else to talk about up there. All right, we are in the green room.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the green room.
I know, what do we have for like 80, 85,
I know
7,
we're going to be coming
who
on.
knows? 90? Why?
I thought so 10 more episodes. We have 100, so we're going to have like this huge, like all these guests come back.
I think we will. And we have a great guest today. I know. Well, listen, we have a recurrent guest, but how can we not have Jody James in today, of course, who's, everything. Listen, more responsibilities for you, and you'll talk to us about it in a second. But of course, has been at the forefront of the cannabis movement in Florida and medical cannabis as well with Florida Cannabis Action Network. So, Jody, welcome back. And listen, you've been all over the place. You were actually in Miami yesterday for Nikki Fried's news conference, talking about not only gun rights but other cannabis access issues. But we'll get to it. Listen, we got to start with Jody. The green room. We always got to start with a little general political talk.
Let's talk about Ron DeSantis and Disney, shall we?
No, I call it the rat. I call it the rat. I call it the rat versus the mouse.
Do you know?
Right. Wow.
It's ridiculous. I have friends from Massachusetts. They're like, is he really going against Disney? I'm like,
It's doubling down. It's tripling down. It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Respect, Jody. You've been watching this stuff for a while, of course.
I channel Walt Disney, and my heart is breaking. I just don't, and I don't see how this is a great political move. What I like is his vengeance for Disney is now affecting his place in Northwest Florida. I don't know if you saw, but Disney is not the only special taxing district. There's a special taxing district in Broward, and there are two special taxing districts in Northwest Florida that are all caught in the same thing. Now, whether or not Disney needs special authority, I'm going to say they probably do. Can you imagine being an Orange County building inspector and then being called out to inspect one of those rides?
I know.
You're not competent. You're not qualified.
Yeah, exactly.
A special inspector that would be developed and trained and hired by theme parks. Yes. That's who is. The Orange County business building inspector, dear God, I don't want him deciding. And you know how we know we don't want him deciding whether or not the rides are safe? Because a guy died.
I know, somebody died.
I saw that
on iDrive or whatever, on that 192 theme park. And those are inspected by Orange County, and nobody died at Disney. So congratulations, Ron DeSantis. Once again, you are doing exactly what we need to keep the people of Florida safe.
What I'm struck by is coming back into special session to deal with issues such as this, and then to see the Republican Party just bow down.
Well, because they're woke.
Well, and let's not forget that this special session was created simply because Ron DeSantis did not think that the fare maps were good enough. And the insurance issue has one of our plaintiffs being evicted because the homeowner where she's been living, how insurance is raised, right? Yeah. So if you are a renter and the homeowner insurance just got raised $1,200 a month, guess what happens to your rent?
Too, absolutely.
Because a homeowner that is renting to you is not going to absorb a $1,200. They're going to pass it on.
Of course they will.
So the housing market is in crisis, and Senator Brandes said we need to be dealing with insurance, homeowners insurance this session.
And he's termed out. He's termed out after this year, Jody. I mean, one of the few commonsensical voices up there. And that comes from, listen, he tried to modify Don't Say Gay Either, okay, into taking out the gender issues to it. And listen, I got to give a shout out to people like Senator Brandis. Listen, I don't know if I said it to you or not. Ruta and I were at Tiger Bay a couple weeks ago. I had a chance to address Senator Gruters, our senator, leader of the state Republican Party, and Will Robinson, leader of the state or the House Health Committee that would have heard our bipartisan bill. And I asked him to address that frustration of a bipartisan effort. And it wasn't just us in the cannabis space. There were other bipartisan efforts, right? And they just get buried. And I wasn't going to let them wiggle off the hook by saying it was leadership, because they're the leadership.
Right.
Here we are. We got to wait another year, Jody. We got to wait another year, okay, to address the issues that were so critical this year for access to medical cannabis. And I'll be honest with you, I'm angry, I'm salty, I'm pissed off. I really, really am. And it's gonna gird me to be, I would suspect, more vocal and stronger as we go forward, because I'm not going backwards. But I just get so offended by what they're spending their time on and what they're paying attention to. And people, please vote, register, vote. Come on, Rudolph.
No, I'm going to go one further. If you want to vote for marijuana in 2022, you need to be a registered Democrat and vote for Nikki Fried in the primary. And the reason, did you hear Charlie Crist's comment on Nikki Fried's announcement about the gun suit?
No.
Well, this is interesting timing because the Biden administration has so much to deal with. Well, during COVID was interesting timing. Couldn't do it then. And I've been doing this, you may not know, and your listeners may not know. Florida Cannabis Action Network has been around since 1998. I am a volunteer for Florida Cannabis Action Network. I am a member, just like you are, Dr. Berry. I have no special anything except Florida Cannabis Action Network listens to its members. And I was so frustrated yesterday when Charlie Crist said, well, it's interesting timing. Here's what I know. Ron DeSantis won't, and Charlie Crist can't be trusted on this issue. He had his chance. He was governor before, and now he's saying, well, this is just not good timing. Instead of saying, you know what, on 420, when a lot of people are celebrating a lot of hard-earned rights, we still have a long way to go. And That's why I was proud to stand as a volunteer with Cannabis Action Network, with the Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services, saying that the consumers that I serve are not being served by this policy. And she's the only one who is saying it.
She is. But, and the sad part for me, like when I I've been a Democrat my entire life, and, I have some issues with our own party. And one of them is, first of all, it's a primary, right? So according to the guidelines of the Democratic Party, they're not supposed to actually choose one person over another for anything, because like that happens. So here you have Pelosi already coming out endorsing Charlie Crist. He's pro-life. He was a Republican. People have such short
He
memories.
signed the bong bill and the most regressive cannabis bill in the nation.
Exactly. And people forget this, and they have short-term memory. And it's like, we have to be reminded of who is Charlie Crist. And it's like, and people forget, and they're like, I have friends who are like, oh, it's Charlie. I'm like, why? I'm like, look at his history. Go back, look at his record. I'm like, come on.
If your issue is cannabis, it cannot be Charlie Crist.
No, absolutely not. If it's for women's rights, it cannot be. I mean, these are just, he is like Xing down things that the Democratic Party does not stand for. And yet he's now in the forefront from Pelosi and the party. Like, are you kidding me? Like, whose side are they on? I'm like, you're not representing the progressive Democrats or the Democrats, period.
And I am very proud to say again that if you want to vote to legalize marijuana in November, you have got to vote for Nikki Fried in the primary. And if that means and if you look, no party affiliate. So I one of the things that we heard, and I think what she did yesterday was courageous. And common sense. No, it was common sense. And maybe she should have done it. And maybe the idea that it's courageous is because I've been indoctrinated by poor politicians for 25 years. Because really, she did the right thing.
Yeah, she did.
No,
She
I like
said-
your approach too.
No, I do. I agree.
Let's
I
talk
think she
about it.
should.
So tell us exactly what's going on, because I saw the Rohrbacher Far comes in.
Fabulous.
I know, right. So explain what's going on, Jody. And listen, the reason I wanted to have Jody on this morning, Nikki's a little bit busy herself. And listen, I'm proud to say that I am involved, in the case as the physician for one of the plaintiffs, right? And we'll have that plaintiff on at a later green room.
Well, give some background to the case because people
And-
listening
and
don't
for
know
sure,
what's going
for
on.
sure.
So, absolutely. So, and this is another thing that I think, when you start talking about policy, partisan politics, and assuming that Nikki Fried is doing this for partisan politics, I just have to laugh, because the left of the Democratic Party is so known for embracing guns. But anyhow, we've had an ongoing conflict.
Bazinga.
No, it's
Yeah.
it fits
Hey,
it.
can I say one thing, Jody, before we
Yes.
get too far away?
You
from
can say
Miami?
anything you want. It's your show, and I want to be
Right.
invited back.
No, it is our green room. No, listen, do you get frustrated when you're in a room? So Jody was just in Miami yesterday, everybody, for the news conference for Nikki to talk about this cannabis. And listen, just to give background on it, this is the most frequently asked question that we
Right.
get in the clinic.
Right.
Can
Which
I
is
have
why we're
my
involved.
concealed carry? Okay, and can I own a gun and have a medical cannabis card? We get it every day. We've always had that question every day, and we'll continue to get it every day. But my point is, at that news conference, of course, you were surrounded by all the business types. I mean, the big business types. Okay, Bazinga, it was guys at the Fontainebleau in Miami, blah blah. Do you get frustrated at those people not ponying up their dollars behind our efforts? Hang on, you don't have to answer it. You don't have to answer it, Jody. I'm teasing you, but I'm not. I'll be honest with you. I had a chance to go, and I'm a little soured to those events these days, because I just don't think that they have the same interests of the patients in mind that you and I do. It's business, I got it, but I still think they need to incorporate, those concepts and precepts that we're working for, that job protection, that in-hospital and nursing home use, the breaking down of the various barriers. So I know that that's one of the reasons that it's hard for me to go into those venues these days. Do you feel that?
Well, again, my perspective is kind of long game. So absolutely, I probably not as much as I used to, because now I'm kind of numb to it. And again, what I'm talking about, Nikki being courageous as a politician, the courageous politicians and generous businessmen. Let's remember that when 25 years ago, everybody involved in cannabis was doing it for their own self-preservation, because if you were smoking pot and you were just getting high, or if you were dealing pot, you were very quiet. The people who came out 25 years ago were patients who had been arrested. They were people like our mutual friend, Kathy Jordan, who knew what she was doing was morally correct and that the government was immoral. And it became this sacred trust. And if you have been watching Florida in the last decade, you recognize that what for me and the people that I represented 20 years ago was a sacred trust is now a golden ticket. And there was always some of that, because the dude that was the man that had the pot, he always thought he was all that. And the patients just knew it as life-giving medicine. So having watched the transition from an illegal market to a legal market, knowing that at the end of the day, all I ever cared about was the best interest of the consumer. And I was lucky enough to hook into the people who founded Florida Cannabis Action Network and be a banner carrier for the organization. But at the end of the day, that is still what we care about. And that's why instead of promoting, hey, did you see so-and-so's latest sale, which you do not see on our email list, you see things like, we're still protecting your Second Amendment rights, because we're not done yet. Do I want to see more businesses get on board? Absolutely. And they will. Benzinga is a certified investors conference. And right now, until the federal laws change, most cannabis businesses are Ponzi schemes. Just like Satara said, we need new investors to pay off the bills from last month. Because as long as 280E becomes a problem and you can't write off any of your business expenses, as long as I can't create an amazing product at my lab in Colorado and then send it to my retail outlets in Florida, as long as those two paradigms exist, we don't really have an industry.
Yeah, I agree.
We have a lot of people who want to be important. And you know what, Barry, at the end of the day, most of those conferences like that just look to me like a lot of wannabes who want to be important in this. And the people that I was representing and working with, Nicole Henson, Neil Franklin, Vera Cooper, those folks are consumers in the state of Florida and they have a right to be protected. And I think that the idea that the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services is throwing behind it the full weight and faith of the department is righteous. And I think it's the right time.
Yeah, explain the case, Jody, because, listen,
Fabulous.
I was interested because I read 2 articles about it, but the one I read this morning was a little deeper dive. Marijuana Moment did it. Talked about actually the use of Rohrbacher Farr in a very interesting and unique way.
Oh, this is sexy.
I guess that's why we pay the attorneys $500 an hour or whatever it is.
Now this is really sexy, and I'm really grateful. The Florida Cannabis Action Network approached me several months ago to head up a task force to look at what we could do about guns, because as you mentioned, Barry, it's one of the top issues that Florida Cannabis Action Network reports. I hear the same thing from Minorities for Medical Marijuana. I hear the same thing from Floridians for Florida for Care. This is an issue that affects so many people. We have the 700,000 people who have cards, and then we have the 22 or 21.3 million who could have a card, but have a right to the Second Amendment. So in 2011, as many states were coming on board, and I think I just sent your producer a copy of this memo. In 2011, when many of the states were coming on board, California passed in 1996. By 2010, we had like 17, 18 states that had passed. And the federal government, acting under ATF, sent out a memo. And it basically said, I don't care what the law is in your state, cannabis is still federally illegal. And anyone who fills out this form, and in order to purchase a firearm through I think it's called an NLL, it's a national license, there's no F in it.
This isn't concealed carry,
No.
This is the purchasing of
This has become an issue of concealed carry, and I'll get to that in a minute. In 2011, ATF sent out a memo and reminded people, gun store sellers in this case, the people, that even though cannabis was now legal medically in 18 or 19 states, remember this is before Colorado came on board as a legal state. So everybody was a medical patient in 2011 when the ATF sent out this memo, Justice Department maybe. And it said, you know what, I don't care what it is like in your state. According to this statute, cannabis is still federally illegal, and anyone who uses cannabis and admits to it can't have a gun. And there's the caveat. It's anyone who uses the gun and admits to it. Now, I am Jody James, and I go to take my little course to get a concealed carry permit. And I go to FDLE, it's actually the Department of Agriculture, and I get fingerprinted for my concealed carry permit, and they ship it off, and the background check comes through. Now I get my concealed carry permit. Score. I also have a medical marijuana license. I have just in this case, I have just created a conflict between state and federal law. So now I am attacked in a dark night when I am leaving my office in downtown and my gun is in my purse and I use my firearm. It will entirely be up to the discretion of the prosecutor to determine whether or not I fired an illegal firearm. Because even though the state says it's legal, the firearm itself in my possession is federally illegal. And even if a local prosecutor decided to not press charges, a federal prosecutor could. And that's ridiculous. The chances of it happening, maybe slim, maybe none. But why in 2022 would there be any problem with someone who is legal under state law doing something that is illegal under state law? Only because the feds haven't moved up out of the way. So this 2011 memo stands as the premier last word on it, and nothing has been said about this in 11 years. So for Charlie Crist to say, well, it's pretty bad timing. Yeah, it's really bad timing, Congressman. You should have fixed this when you were up there. It's really bad timing, Governor. You should have asked about this 10 years ago. And I would hope that Governor DeSantis would finally acknowledge that his Commissioner of Agriculture did the best thing for the citizens of this state, acting under her purview as Commissioner of Agriculture.
I wouldn't hold my breath on that one, Jody, that's for sure. But it's an interesting stance. And as I think Nikki explained yesterday, the protection of the citizens to the extent with appropriate gun controls, is really what it's all about, and the freedoms as well. It's a common sense approach, and I guess that's what I think we all would want to see.
What amazes me, this is the thing, because I have a concealed carry permit with me all times, and I have firearms on me and in my house. I do. And so for me though, what amazes me is you can have cocktails and alcohol and do all this other whatever you want, and it's okay. Yet for some reason, a medical necessary card that was deemed medically necessary by the state does not want you to have that firearm. And I'm like, what? I'm like, but the guy who's 3 sheets to the window having a bottle of vodka has his gun on him, he's fine to go. Oh, it's like, are you kidding me? Really?
Yeah. Well, and I think the law, absolutely. That is part and parcel to the insanity that led to the passage of the Rohrabacher-Farr Amendment, which was the other thing that you brought up. And how fortunate that I've been doing this long enough to have remembered when this thing came about too. Florida Can is looking at asking me to be their historian. I'm just saying.
You don't have the gray hairs yet,
Oh, you would be surprised how many I have earned from working in this space, though.
What are the steps? What are the steps? Where does it go?
Rohrabacher, we don't know, because the new thing is this Rohrabacher-Farr. And 1996, California passes medical marijuana, and Cannabis Action Network in California, which is all part of the same organization that I've been a volunteer for since the 90s, was able to pass Amendment Prop 215, and Cannabis Action Network went on to adult use. Well, it wasn't very long after they passed that the federal government started sending in the feds to shut down buyers clubs, to lawsuits that went all the way to the Supreme Court were generated from it. And Representative Farr and Rohrabacher put together an amendment to the budget, the DOJ budget, that said the Department of Justice can't expend any funds to prosecute cannabis in legal states. So they have the Justice Department. You guys pay a lot of attention. I'm trying to watch the time. Recently, the federal government interfered in Illinois. They arrested a man who was trying to transport plants into it. There has been some interference in Arkansas. So we're starting to see the Department of Justice under the Biden administration, who said he would legalize marijuana, but we can do that in another show. They are starting to expend resources again against the cannabis industry. And this has everybody concerned. And the Rohrabacher-Farr Amendment still exists, and it says they can't expend any money. So it will be very interesting. The lawyers in Dean Mead, there's another, and I apologize to the Dean Mead folks that I can't remember who the third partner is, but they've come up with something that is brilliant. Our task force, Florida Cannabis Action Network task force, really picked apart the legal arguments with some amazing big brains that have been doing this for a very long time. And this is the most exciting lawsuit that we have seen moving at the federal level ever. This is not the first one I have been involved in. I was involved in a class action lawsuit in the early 1990s. Kathy Jordan, our friend from right up the road, was involved in a federal lawsuit. That went on for more than 14 years, and she was one of two plaintiffs that was able to get standing. That was ultimately dismissed. In this lawsuit, we have fabulous plaintiffs.
So the presumption would be they can't spend the money to rig it right. There's no funding for it. There's no
can't defend it. So we're typically, and I'm saying we, and though really Florida Canna is not a plaintiff, I am not a plaintiff, but boy, I'm taking this personally. Pardon me. The plaintiffs, the lawyers, typically what would happen, we have filed in federal court, things will sit for a minute while the Justice Department and ATF's lawyers put together an answer. They will do a motion to dismiss based upon the fact that we don't have standing. And then there'll be some arguments in court on whether or not we have standing. This is certainly not a political ploy. If we hear about this for more than another 30 seconds, it'll be because the plaintiffs are so amazing and the issue is so important to so many people. But really, we won't hear about this again until the next thing happens. And that will likely be some sort of oral arguments about whether or not we have standing. And that is after they figure out whether or not they can even expend the funds. At the end of the day, if the federal government capitulates and recognizes that removing cannabis from Schedule 1 of the Federal Controlled Substance Act is the right answer, then all of the work that I personally have done as an advocate for 25 years would make me feel successful. If not, this is just another one of the steps that we have to take to make sure that people who want to consume cannabis are fully recognized under the color of law.
There's a lot of peaks. There's a lot of peaks in the mountain range, so to speak, Jody.
I've developed hinds feet.
Yeah.
But they're always, to me, they always come up, all of these things. I don't know.
It's descheduling.
It's
the
descheduling.
descheduling.
But it's just asinine because the moment they it's like all these people have to go through all this BS. At the end of the day,
what's so frustrating about it.
It's frustrating because why? It's like the magic pen, deschedule and you're done. And it's crazy. The amount of money that's being spent on ridiculousness. It's making a lot of attorneys always rich, as they always do, as we know.
So listen, thanks for that. Listen, I was going to call this show the morning after, because it is the morning after 420, of course, but I know we're going to see you this weekend, Jody, at Brian Guano's event. Let's go ahead and give him
Flow Fest.
Right.
I meant to do it earlier. Thank you very much. I will absolutely be talking to people about this at Flow Fest. Florida Cannabis Action Network is looking for some attorneys to represent us as an organization. We would encourage your folks to join Florida Cannabis Action Network and become a dues paying member, just like I am, and just like you are, Dr. Berry, so that you too can be represented in this suit. I think this is really important. We're encouraging minorities for medical marijuana to join because we recognize the impact they're having in this state. And we're really, if you have an audience of people who are listening from around the country, which I know you do, we're looking for amicus briefs and plaintiffs from other states. But one thing, if I may, and I see the time, a point of personal privilege, thank you for all that you guys are doing for our loved ones in Western Europe. I know you guys have really been doing a lot of work on the Ukraine thing. Thank you very much. One of the funders that I was talking to over the weekend about helping make sure that this thing can move forward. So, wow, Jody, there's so much right now going on, and particularly all of the people that are suffering in the Ukraine. So thank you guys for the work you've done there.
Listen, you can only do what you can do, Jody, and that's why I love what you do, because you put your focus on those things that are within the scope of your control. And listen, we fret about those things or not. Yeah, I know. We
control being the illusion that it is.
Yeah, I got you. But no, listen, so Flow Fest this weekend is what up in
Manatee. We'll be at the Manatee County Fairground. You can still get tickets on Eventbrite for Flow Fest. The organizers do an amazing job of creating a fun, safe environment. Absolutely.
Arizona SRQ.
I hope Nikki Freed should send her some of her campaign sprouts that are, like she has surrogates. They need to be going out there and getting people to vote for her, and making it clear that
she needs to energize on the issues where she knows she's the winner.
Okay,
I hope.
But that's your job and my job and Dr. Barry's job. It really is. We and the cannabis community, and I know we're running out of time, but I'm going to say it again. If you want to vote to legalize marijuana in November, you have got to be a registered Democrat and vote for Nikki Freed in the primary. Absolutely. Again, if you want to vote to legalize marijuana, because Ron won't do it and Charlie Crist can't be trusted.
Yeah.
If you are an independent, if you are a no party affiliate, polls say that no party affiliates and independents take this issue very personally and support legalization with 90%. And all of those people will be left with no one to vote for in November unless they change their party affiliation. Change back. Be whoever you want to be. Absolutely. Be whoever you want.
But it's true. But they do. They need to register as Democrats so they can vote in the primary and then flip back later.
Or we're done. Or they will not. Or they will not see. It'll be 4 years in Florida.
Yeah.
Ron DeSantis it is pivotal. Ron DeSantis has put up every barrier possible, including I love your logo, incling
guys gave this to me for 420, and I thank my staff.
Your team loves you. Yeah. Ron DeSantis won't. Charlie Crist, the most regressive in 2011. I had a board member who Florida Can had a board member that came on board that said, I just want to be 49th. Because in 2011, thanks to the efforts of Charlie Crist and the bills that he signed as governor, Florida was considered the most regressive marijuana state in the country. Right. Thanks to Florida Cannabis Action Network and folks like Floridians for Care and yourselves, we are no longer 49th. But let's put that guy back in charge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jody, as always, you've been a fantastic guest. We will see you this weekend up in Manatee, and safe travels.
And for all of those listening, we're still collecting funds for Ukraine because we are buying medical supplies and they are getting there.
No, listen, Ruta saw her writing on boxes literally in Ukraine with the Ukrainian soldier. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, this Ukrainian soldier, he was opening and he was thanking the Americans who sent it, and it was our box. Like we sent
our box.
It was ours crazy. With my handwriting. I'm like, oh my God, he opened our box. Like that was incredible. So
I know, isn't that crazy?
Yeah. So please keep Ukraine in everybody's prayers, and Slava Ukraini, and
we'll see you next week.